Hello everyone, back again with a new video for this DIYLC component creation series. So I said in the last one that we're going to have a look at doing the buzzer symbol, but because editing that last video was a nightmare, I've decided to go ahead and do it ahead of time. So instead what we're going to do is just a brief look over, while it's still sort of fresh in my head, what was involved. I actually ended up doing two symbols because the person who requested the buzzer symbol actually meant they wanted a buzzer PCB type component as opposed to a schematic symbol. So I've ended up doing both. I did this one first, buzzer symbol, so we'll have a look at that first. I also wanted to add here that I have gone and updated the wiki regarding the building aspect, because there is some difference with this in the ant build libraries that you need to add, and also you might need to change the build.xml file for your OS. I've opened a pull request back to Bancika with the wiki, and there's the pull request of the IEC symbol that we did in the last video, and as well as the two symbols I just mentioned. So let's have a look in Eclipse and see what I actually did. This is going to be a bit more of a generic overview. I will admit I'm not very good. As I was editing that video, I realised how bad I actually am at programming. Oh well. So to start with, we have the class for the buzzer symbol, and we have the component descriptor at the top, which says it's the buzzer symbol, it's by me, it's in the category schematic symbols. This is actually the category that it uses in the program while it's running, as opposed to the category as the code is organized. I mentioned before that those are different, but that's where the program, when it compiles, that's how it knows which category to put it in this component descriptor annotation. Instance prefix, so BZ for buzzer, like BZ1, BZ2, description, all that sort of stuff. Again, this is another one that extends the abstract schematic leaded symbol part. Everything we've done so far is on this one, so for doing those, there's a few open issues for components like this, so it's good to start with something based on that. You'll notice the buzzer one is abstract radial component I end up using. I based it on the radial capacitor, but they both have that same drag and pull property. So here's the usual getters and setters. That's the usual way that a lot of Java programmers work. So we have editable property, voltage. There's nothing really here that you haven't seen before. Some overrides, these are just from the top class. If returning the default width, for example, I think in the class above it doesn't by default do that, so you have to override it. Or it might be because the width and the length were changed up here. I can't remember exactly. You'll have to read the code. The big one, as I said, there's three main things that you need to worry about when you're creating your component. You need the draw icon, which draws it in. If I go and run the program, which the one that draws it in the tree. You have get body shape, which creates the base shape of the body. Get body shape in this case is this, the buzzer schematic symbol, is this semicircle with the two leads coming out. And in the case decorate component body is used when you have like decorations on it. So you'll see here I've put in a comment here, but I haven't actually made anything for it yet. You could end up decorating the component with like a plus sign to say this is an active buzzer, but I haven't done that yet. Maybe that's something that someone watching could do to get started. That's sort of the same vein as the resistor symbol. Also created this buzzer one. This one's quite easy. It's just a circle and then another circle inside. I based it on the radial cap. It was a bit of a nightmare getting it converted over because he had the datasheet stuff. Actually, look, I've still got enable datasheet in there. That should probably be removed. I had to remove some of these classes for the datasheet as well. I didn't finish this long ago, I still need to tidy it up, to be honest. Again, this one's a bit more clearer, so we've got the draw icon on the side, so we've got the main body is this ellipse 2D, and then a little circle in the center, which is another ellipse 2D, but smaller. You'll see I used these margins and then I times them just by a smaller amount. Decorate component body, so in this case I added a polarity mark. I might actually fix this. I think I need to make it smaller and also with a broader stroke. I think that could actually be smaller and with a broader stroke. Just to update you, I had to update build XML. By default this will say win, but of course I'm on Linux, so I have to build the universal build. So yeah, if you're having troubles building the swing library, that's what you need to change. I actually might change this to say PCB buzzer, because there's a lot of different buzzers out there. One thing I want to talk about is when you're doing these draw icon, decorate component body, I found it really useful to have a pen and paper next to me and actually draw it out. The Java 2D graphics library starts with an origin in the top left corner. If you remember when I was doing the resistor, I got it all the wrong way around, because first I thought it started in the center, then I thought it started in the bottom left hand corner, but it actually starts in the top left hand corner, and then positive that way, positive that way. And when you're drawing a component, you're drawing it from the center outwards, and Bancika's classes will deal with actually centering it. This one was a bit tricky because of course it's not drawn, it's all drawn on the one side of the line, so I had to make some changes. There is a specific mode in the class, if I remember right. Yes, this option here, use shape rect as position, return false. You need to override that if you are going to make a component that does not sit central around the legs of the component. But for most components, like these circular ones, for a component that sits symmetrically across the schematic leads, you'll be able to leave that as true, or you won't need to override it. But if it doesn't, you will need to override that. Regarding the buzzer symbol, the other thing is that because it takes over abstract radial component, which as far as I can see only gets used on the capacitor at the minute, the default pin spacing was not correct. It was set at like 0.1, and trying to override it was a bit of a nightmare because I didn't understand it at first. But what you need to do is you need to use this set pin spacing at the start, either in like get body shape for each time it's drawn, or you could do that in the constructor up here. That might be a better place to do it. Actually, I'm going to do that now. Label just defaults to the center. I think if I wanted to, I could move it. Oh, and if I do move it, I need to change the label color. It's white in the middle to actually show up against the silver base. Oh, that's a bit of an annoyance with Eclipse. When you want to copy something or move it, you'll have to go into the refactor menu. And the rename option will give you the option to rename the references inside the class as well as the file name. Also, if you're moving the classes around, for example, I used for this buzzer Java the radial capacitor as a base, but of course radial capacitor sits under passive components, and then when I wanted to put it under miscellaneous, it required some different imports. So that's another thing to be careful, because they weren't in the same folder together. Version ID, you don't need to change that if that's your first component. Default length and default width, those are just the ones I set it to based on what seemed to look right. Get value for display, I think I left these alone. These are certainly the same. These are certainly the same. These are certainly the same. Get body shape, of course, changed. I can actually remove these comments now. Yep, see I mentioned here use shape rect as position. I had to override that, otherwise it tries to sit mirror image. So length, create the arc, which is the semicircle part. I drew it as a closed arc, which is the Arc2D chord option. Then I draw the lines coming out, so the left lead's coming out, the right lead's coming out, and then the bottom parts as they go. So coming out in that way, and then the bottom parts as they connect actually to the width of the shape. If you see that goes blue, and then it turns black. So this is the bit that's dealt with by the abstract class, and that's the bit that I had to draw to connect it within the component. Then I created a new general path. As we said, general path just seems to be the easiest way, and you can append all these shapes onto a general path to create the full shape, because in this case you have to return a shape interface. You can't just draw direct to the canvas, because the drawing is handled by the parent class that calls get body shape. Decorate component body, there's nothing here for this one. In buzzer.java, I do believe there is a bit. I used it because you imagine the shape is just the outline of it, but if you have anything to add in the middle of it or things that sit off to the side, that's what this is for. In this instance, you draw direct to the canvas. If you imagine your 0, 0, your shape is already there. You like draw on top of it using the graphics 2D instance that's provided. And then draw icon, that's the same again. You've got graphics 2D. It provides you the width and the height. The idea being that on different screens, you know, the width and height that it has available will be different. You need to change 3 functions. You need get body shape for your base shape, decorate component body for any flare that it has, and draw icon for the icon that's in the tree of components. So yeah, you use those. First thing to do for a lot of components is you rotate your canvas. This rotate command changes the whole geometry ahead of doing any drawing, so you can treat it as if it's the easier way of drawing it, with like this being flat and horizontal as opposed to having to draw it diagonal, which is really useful. So yeah, go and have a look for that. That is useful if you're trying to draw things in the style. As Bancika says in his wiki, it's important to maintain a consistent style. Make sure, look around and be consistent with what's already there, so things should be drawn in the southwest northeast direction like this. That's the little line of code you need ahead of time to make your life easier. Likewise, a lot of this actually you'll see looks the same as get body shape. You can sort of reuse a lot of the ideas. You end up having to do things slightly different, of course, because it's not the same as returning the shape you're drawing direct to the canvas. Basically, the G2D draw interface, you can take anything like a line 2D, a general path, a rectangle 2D, whatever, and just draw it. So if you want to, you can just straight up sort of copy what you've done here and then pass it to the draw interface, which is really nice. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I was going to mention. You need to go project, properties, and then you'll be in this one. Change your formatter. I renamed mine Eclipse built-in spaces because I noticed in my last video that I had like 4 space tabs and then there's 2 space stuff going on. Bancika's coding style is a 2 space based indentation. By default, Eclipse comes with a 4 space one, which is annoying, and you'll have noticed in my previous video a lot of these look a bit ugly because there's a mismatched style. But if you want your formatter to deal with that, so when you hit tab it just does 2 spaces, which is useful for when you're typing, you need to hit edit and it'll come up with this, and you can go white space, I believe. Oh no, tab policy, indentation size, set it to spaces only and indentation size 2, and you should be okay. I just thought I'd get that out of the way so you're not being like me and making mismatched code. For convenience, when I was doing it before, I was going right click, run as, amp build. You've got these symbols at the top. So that's the debug one. I've never actually used the debug one. I've been able to get away without using it. I can't see how it's useful for drawing stuff anyway. If you're debugging the core, it could be useful. Or you've got a component that's slow to draw, like the toroidal transformer is at the minute, then you'll use the debug. But for drawing out components, it's just quicker to rebuild and run in my case. This run button will pretty much always run DIYLC starter, so you can just hit that one. And this, see with the brick next to it, is the build, and if you hit it normally it'll just run the last used tool, which in our case is practically always DIYLC library, or if not, all the other build XMLs are here to run as an amp build. So as you're coding you can just go that, this will pop up, show you the compile, and then you can just hit run and it runs. I always forget to close my last used instance, which is annoying. If you need a new editable property, you need to do the getters and setters for it. Getter, setter, and label them at editable property. You'll also want to create all your useful lengths, widths, other properties like the voltages, the pin spacing, etc. Sometimes you'll need like the 2 of them, so you can use them with the getter and setter, in which case you make the other one like private. The constructor is useful if you need to set some useful things like the label color, pin spacing, etc. These overrode the constructor here with a different version if it's passed a string. Getters and setters as before. Some of these overridden, but if they're already overridden, then you can just leave them as is when you copy the class. I had to create some get and set whole color, but you can see it's just the same as these polarized ones and get set folded. Nothing really to worry about. I hope this helps you, and yeah, fingers crossed you get going making some components. In the next video I'm going to start looking at doing that ZIF socket. I have some ideas about how I'm going to approach it. Of course that'll be quite different because we're not using this abstract schematic leaded symbol class. It's a different thing. It doesn't have that drag and pull property. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I might not do it for a couple of weeks so I can leave this video up and get any response. If you prefer the way that the old video was done, as you see me sort of coding it, it's a pain for me to edit, but if that's the way it would be preferred, I'll do it that way. If you'd prefer that I just write it and then I make a more concise video like this one going through what I did, I'm happy to do it that way as well. Yeah, I just want to reiterate about the drawing it on a notepad. Just draw your like Euclidean geometry and then work out where each thing is. You know, you have your total width of the shape, total length or height or whatever. Of course, with like the folded thing, you end up having to worry about the 3 dimensions, even though it's only ever going to be drawn in 2. Oftentimes I got it wrong. It's been ages since I did maths at school. Grab a calculator, have fun. That's it for now. I hope this helps you start creating things for DIYLC in Java. Bye bye for now, and I'll catch you in the next one.